Well, Tom Brady is talking now. I don't know. You can react to this however you want. I'll say it again. I believe that Tom Brady has been working very hard to rebrand himself away from the robotic, intense football player to a media personality. That's what I think he's trying to do, and I think he's diving head first. And I think the roasts on Netflix was a big part of that. Was it partially Fox encouraging all this? Maybe. I wouldn't blame them if they did. But Brady he's trying to be different. Now, I wish he didn't work on his face so much because it's looking a little silly. So now he says he regrets his roast.
Shopify helps you sell at every stage of your business.
Is it possible? Think about this. Is it possible that he didn't know what was coming that night? He's acting now as if I didn't know it was going to quite turn out the way it did. I didn't know it was going to go the direction that it did. Is it possible? Are you willing to believe? I don't think you will, but I'll try. Is it possible he didn't know what was coming? And that is the ex-wife jokes in particular. Are you going to agree with him? Are you going to find yourself sympathetic to him at all when he says, almost in tears, to be honest with you, the damage this has done to my kids is too much. I will never do this again. I don't think you're going to buy it. But he's now describing the blowback and what it was like after this hugely popular roast. I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now on Netflix.
Loved when the jokes were about me. I thought they were so fun. I didn't like the way that it affected my kids. So it's the hardest part about like the bittersweet aspect of when you do something that you think is one way and then all of a sudden you realize I wouldn't do that again because of the way that it affected actually the people that I care about the most in the world. So like it makes you in some ways a better parent going through it because again sometimes you're naive, you don't know, or you get a little like and like I said, I when I signed up for that, I love when people were making fun of me, and I always said like when I was going through all the Deflategate stuff in 2015, 2016, I watched 3 things on TV. I watched Premier League soccer, I watched golf, and I watched comedy shows because every time I turn on SportsCenter, I was like, are you kidding me?
I don't think that's playing well. It's up to you. How do you take that position? I don't think it's playing well. I assume the problem he's having, and he said about how it affected his kids. I assume the problem he's having is about the jokes about his marriage, his kid's mom. They were both ridiculed. It was brutal. But they were ridiculed for the stories of her and her karate coach. Nikki Glaser, the comedian who became a rock star, an overnight, even bigger rock star out of that night, pretty much said, I think she pretty much said publicly, because she's doing interviews all the time now. I mean, that's what she does. She's a personality. She's a comedian. And I think she pretty much said, you got to lighten up. So she says this, Nikki Glaser, winner of the Tom Brady Netflix roast, fires back at the NFL star's regrets. She says she thinks Brady maybe didn't consider the backlash from his family and how it would affect them. She also expressed disbelief that Brady wasn't aware of what he was getting into, noting that he could have prepared by watching footage of previous comedy roasts. She says, quote, I think it's kind of the thing you say after the fact. It's impossible to me that he didn't consider what could have happened. She goes on to say, the comedian said she and her fellow roasters agreed beforehand not to bring Brady's children into the mix. Glaser later added there weren't specific guidelines on which topics were off limits. I got a sense, she says, that it was a little more than he'd planned for. He hadn't planned out how to react. At first, it kind of jarred him. I don't really think he thought they were going to go there. How could they not? He was married to one of the most famous women on the planet, who famously is bopping around with the kid's karate coach or her karate coach, right? I mean, it wasn't really difficult. It was a sensational story that was pretty ugly for everyone involved. Okay. The jokes, I'm sure, sucked for your kids. That's their mom. But he chose to go there. I mean, he may not know everything that was coming his way, but you had to know a lot of the jokes were going to be about your failed marriage. You're the one who went public saying, I'm going to retire. You unretired, man. I'm going to retire because I need, my wife wants me at home or whatever. And then you showed up at training camp, and then you left again. Or you left again because you found out she was fooling around on you. I mean, you don't think those are going to be jokes? It's less than 2 years ago. Here's the other thing. Like I said, how do you react to how he's reacting now? Do I think the guy legitimately feels kind of badly about it? Yeah, probably so. Probably so. But this idea that this wasn't going to come up is really hard to believe. Because even Drew Bledsoe, who I thought was pretty interesting that night, there's a lot of people that were funny that night. He was over the top. That's why it is such a big deal. It was over the top. They went places where nobody thought anyone would go, and that's why people thought it was funny. I mean, it was brutal, but that's why it was successful. But even Drew Bledsoe, I saw in an interview, Drew Bledsoe said that he called Brady up. Drew Bledsoe, very good NFL quarterback, lost his job to Tom Brady when he was injured. The rest is history. I mean, Drew Bledsoe, as good as he was, will always be known as the guy that got hurt that let Tom Brady had the greatest career of all time. But Drew Bledsoe is not a nutcase. He even did an interview. He said he called Brady beforehand and even asked him if he was cool with it. And he said that Brady said, there's nothing that is going to be said that I haven't heard. And that was the impression from what Drew Bledsoe was saying, and I think Nikki Glazer as well, that everybody had. That, listen, man, everything's on limits. They even brought up Aaron Hernandez killing himself. I mean, that was the whole point of the night, was that nothing is sacred. Bob Kraft sitting there. I thought that was crazy. But they talked about him being at a massage place that was being investigated for underage girls. I mean, that was the point of the roast. That's why the show was a hit. It was a viral hit also. It lived on because the jokes were so over the top. It was brutal and people loved it. They loved it, the fact that it was brutal. Now, like I said, do you have any sympathy whatsoever for what Brady is saying now? Do you respect at all him coming back now and saying, I didn't know it was going to affect my kids like this. I didn't know it was going to bother them this way, that kind of stuff. I mean, it may be naive to say, well, why don't you not watch it? The fact that it's lived on virally may be impossible not to see, but I can't believe ahead of time a guy who's been a megastar for the last 20 years knows he's going to get grilled, knows what's coming his way. I think he had to know what's coming his way and didn't say, look, kids, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be bizarre and wild. It's going to go viral. I don't know what all they're going to say, but it could be rough. I mean, you wouldn't say that ahead of time? I don't know. I don't know how this plays in the Brady rebranding. I don't know how much of this, if he can go now kind of out there and do interviews all the time and say, and this kind of his mission is, I'm sorry I did this. Is that really going to work? I mean, are people going to take him sincerely, and is it going to kind of ruin the brand? The whole point of the night for Brady in a positive way is that you looked at him in a different way. You looked at him exactly the way he wants now. He wants to be a media personality. He wants to be an edgier version of Peyton Manning. That's what I think he's trying to do. And this was the way to do it. Is this apology, almost in tears, going to ruin the rebranding? Are people really going to feel sorry for him? Are you going to say, oh, man, Tom, I'm sorry you got tricked into that. I can't believe Kevin Hart talked you into that. I can't believe Gronkowski and Bill Belichick talked you into this night. Are people really going to react that way?